Good night, viewers. Welcome to Biinstitute's first IG Live. Here in our weekly series, we'll be talking about navigating the financial storm. I'm Omar Hutchinson, your financial brethren, here to bring you your weekly dose of financial news through a simplified discussion. This week, we'll be having a few guests. We'll be having the likes of Senator Dr.Andre Haughton, Mrs.Michelle Sinclair-Doyley, Mr.Jordane Richardson. So this week we'll be going through a few topics just for you to understand on a simplified basis. We'll be talking about oil prices. Oil prices right now are at record low, and we'll be talking about how that impacts the economy. We'll be talking about the impact of COVID-19 on the Jamaican economy. We'd also like to give a special thank you to our sponsors, A&N. We believe in taking loan to you, that's their slogan. We'll be also talking about our other sponsor, Black Knight Graphics, K Studios, and Island Beverages. So joining us live shortly will be Dr. Andre Haughton. We'll be going to him shortly, just 1 second. So until Andre.
Yeah, man. Night, Omar. How is everything? Good night, viewers.
Good night, Senator. How are you doing?
Yeah, man. We're hanging in there, taking it one day at a time, you know.
Excellent, excellent.
My sister taught me a thing to do when you're doing the live. So you write out the name of the live and I comment. And then after you press the comment, you hold on it, and then when you hold on it, you pin it. So what this does, this make people can see a thing after this. You understand?
Makes sense.
Yeah. So do that, man. Cause good for your thing.
Makes sense. So, we're having that done right away.
Excellent.
So, Senator,
so everything.
Senator, things good enough, but it could be better, you know. We're giving thanks to health right now and strength.
Yes. I mean, the economy is in a state of topsy-turvy. We're seeing what is happening now, where many countries have been negatively impacted by this COVID-19 crisis. And this has not only been having a negative impact on the healthcare sector, but also on overall economic activity. And the idea here is that when people have to stay in, those of us who could not earn offline are going to find ourselves in problems. So I'm in a group now and people are discussing with me the bars and the shops that are closed, and they are saying what is the solution that we're going to find for them. And a lot of people have been without income. And what does this mean? It means that the money does not motivate movement because there's just no money. And a lot of business can't afford to operate as they once would. And it has been having a negative impact on the overall livelihood of many people. But if we want to speak particularly to even the oil prices and what has been happening in that particular arena, you see where last week oil price fell to negative futures. So the companies there, when they are looking at buying oil, because the price has fallen so low, then we would have hoped that Jamaica would have tried to benefit from that. It sparked a big discussion, but the discussion has been ongoing, isn't it? Because for quite some time now, everyone has been complaining about the cost of energy in Jamaica. And we have been saying that the manufacturing can't really escalate how we want it to, because many people can't get electricity as cheaply as they would get it in our competitive countries. So other competitors to us, I think it was 37 cents per kilowatt, and while other countries are getting it at less than 15 cents per kilowatt, some less than 10 cents per kilowatt. So the idea here is what could have been done, or what can we do to reduce the cost of energy to the domestic economy. And the idea is that you want to look at where are the costs coming from with the oil prices, where the costs, I mean, oil costs X amount per barrel, and what happens to it when it gets here to be refined, what happens to it. So I was taking a keen interest in the level of taxes that the government was putting on the oil prices per annum. So in 2015, they imposed, I think, $7 SCT on petroleum and related products to earn the government about $7 billion, and about $2 on heavy fuel oil and so on to earn the government about $1.8 billion. They did the same thing in 2016 and a similar thing in 2017. And over those 3 years, the government implemented tax on petrol to the tune of about $25, and to earn them about that amount in billions, 25 billions in revenues. Now, whilst the government wants to earn revenues by imposing taxes, I think that if the economy was given a chance to breathe, then more companies could be in the production processes. And when more companies are in the production processes, the government therefore will be able to get more tax from the more business activity. So I gave a speech in the Senate about my understanding and about how we should have approached it from the gas tax point of view. And when that was about a month ago, for the budget, for the Senate budget debate, and when I did so, JPS, when the coronavirus came, because we were doing it very close up to the corona time, JPS even came out and said that if the government were to lessen some of these taxes on their inputs, we speak of oil, then they would be in a position to automatically transfer these benefits to consumers. And the pass-through has been a problem, and that is what people are seeing. And what is the pass-through? The pass-through is basically whenever there are upward or downward movements in any particular price. In this case, we're talking about oil. Then whenever there are upward and downward movement, then there are costs and benefits. So if oil prices fall, then there's a cost, there's a benefit that the oil companies receive. It oil prices increase, then there's a cost. But what you realize is that they tend to transfer the costs, which are the upward movements, rather than transfer the benefits, which are the downward movements. So a lot of people were wondering, why is this so? And then we were getting information from Petrojam that they were using a pricing mechanism that allowed them to place even a markup that was more than 100% or even 200% of the price at which they were getting oil. So it's not just about the tax anymore, because the tax plays a role, but now you are seeing that we are really sabotaging ourselves as a country, because we are facilitating the inefficiency that takes place in Petrojam. So we're seeing a lot of the transparency that we've always wanted from a particular process and an understanding. We're seeing so many people who are familiar with the process are coming out now and talking, and more people now are saying that, and then people are saying why we didn't hear this long time. And so the country is in a position now to better understand itself. And I think that when we better understand ourselves and the processes, production processes and so on, then we will be better able to what we call minimize our losses and then increase in our revenues. Because whatever the government does has bearing on the future of the country, and whatever we do and how we operate, and if you're not old enough, might not be, but you study economics, so you would have remembered the oil price shocks of the 1970s, and those were the shocks that tipped the global economy into one of the greatest recessions. So after that, what happened is that because oil prices increased so much, then many countries had balance of payments problems, and they had to go to the IMF. Now, with the fall in oil prices that we have been seeing since even 2010, since 2015, since this year, those should have been passed through, but have not been, and we are seeing that Petrojam is inefficient.
So, Senator, you're essentially saying we, the consumers, shouldn't expect a decrease in prices at the pump or our bill.
No, I was just watching the news, oil
Anytime
prices
soon,
are
right?
going up tomorrow again, And that is the issue here in Jamaica, because what I'm understanding is that we can't manufacture oil as effectively as we want to. So it's better if we buy the finished product. But because many people benefit from the profits of Petrojam, then many people wouldn't want to advocate for it to close it. So there are a lot of issues that come into play, because they are saying it's an old refinery, it needs improvement, and so on and so forth. So that is why we can't have the economies of scale where that is concerned.
Okay. Senator, the second discussion point we'd like to touch on is really exploring the impact on the sectors such as equity, the financial sector, and the manufacturing sector. What's happening there?
Yeah, if you look at the equity, and we are looking at local versus international stocks. Remember, the Jamaican economy is what we call distance to frontier. So it's very far from where it should be. So what this means is that it is susceptible to global shocks, but not as susceptible as a Delta, or for example, America Stock Exchange, or England Stock Exchange. When you look in the global economy, there are a lot of, the travel industry has taken a plunge. Hotel, tourism, airlines are now in problems, and so on and so forth. But some healthcares have been improving, logistics have been improving, and we're seeing where the world is now moving from the normal economy that we're familiar with to an isolated economy. And there are processes now that are going to be important to connect this isolation. And these companies that try to solve these problems now are in a position to really explode. AI, artificial intelligence companies are increasing. We saw where last month Tesla's stocks fell below 700, and it was about at about 900, and it fell below 700, and now it's back above 700. So it's about
800 and plus to them, and earnings.
Yeah, so you are getting an understanding that if you are thinking futuristic and your company is futuristic, it is meeting the demands of the modern economy, then these companies, their stocks are going to be robust. Don't watch the short-term volatility, because there's always going to be short-term volatility. What you're thinking about is the long-term co-integration, the long-term trend that these stocks hold a positive trajectory.
Senator, I'd like for you to touch on the BPO sector a little bit, because we see where sector is probably the largest or second largest employer, right, of Jamaicans, some 40,000 plus. I'd just like you to touch on that point a little bit in terms of the Alorica situation and what it
Yeah,
means
I'm
for the
hearing about the
persons that laid
BPOs,
off
but
working
what
from
we're
home.
doing in Montego Bay to solve the problem is that Vista Print and a couple of other BPOs have rented out hotels and have isolated their staff at the hotels. So they are still in operation, but they have been clever. And there are other companies who have been looking at work from home programs, because work from home programs are going to be very important, especially where we're seeing the world outside now as being dangerous to our physical health. So the BPOs, if they were clever, they could have rethought their approach. But I guess with data management, that comes into play as well, and privacy. And sometimes these operations are not very easy. But the idea here is Jamaica, we haven't been thinking about the BPO as efficiently as we could have been. And a lot of people who incur transportation costs, who incur other costs by moving from home to the BPO, you could have solved that issue if there was a platform that could allow them to do the same thing from a remote location, but it's connected to a central network. So the BPO is important, but this crisis also is important. So we have to think about how we manage it, because we have to, so the idea here is that people must be given the ability to be able to work from wherever they choose, especially jobs like that.
Senator, I also wanted to touch on a little bit about us losing certain key accounts as a result of this.
Yeah. We know we're the global economy now, whether or not we can operate. We could be in operation and still lose key accounts because they lose business in these countries. Now, when we lose key accounts, where are those accounts going? Are they going to another country? And if they're going to another country, how has that country solved those problems that we are facing now so that we lose our accounts to that country? So Vista Print have implemented a solution. They have rented out a hotel and they have placed their staff in the hotel. If Alarica was thinking forward looking, they could have rented out the Pegasus or rented out Courtly Hotel or wherever and put their staff. You understand what I'm saying? So the idea here is the type of management and how you think. So that's the scenario.
True. So, in terms of the housing sector now, with an already saturated housing market, right, where the prices for residential homes and apartments are literally through the roof, given the layoff of or even job losses in certain cases of home owners, right? In the near term to medium term, for the millennials watching now, I'd like you to just touch on where do you see housing prices?
I mean, it can take two ways. One is that because of low demand, then the price might fall as well because you want to attract demand in certain areas. And one thing that you must remember is that many of these residential properties, especially in metropolitan areas, speaking about, for example, Kingston or Montego Bay, they attract those who have a particular ability to service these loans. And a lot of the apartments have been way out of the ballpark of, for example, many civil servants or many lower level income earners. So a lot of them couldn't afford it in the first place. And now what is happening is that if their tourists can't come, if a lot of people from abroad can't demand many of these properties, then the price will be forced down. And if the prices are forced down, then we could see where they could get a chance to take advantage of this within the crisis period. But if residential owners tuck in, so if they tuck in and they hold their properties and wait until foreigners can afford, then you'll see where the economy now is so unpredictable. All we have to do is scenario mapping. So it's not as if you can make a definitive advice as to what will happen in the next 3 months or what will happen in the next 6 months. What you have to look at is how different economic agents respond to different types of economic progression. So that is important as well. But where housing is concerned, what I would encourage the millennials to do now is to try to save their deposits and keep them going. If people can't service their mortgages, then they will have to come together and create a group to let the government understand this, and the government now will have to tell banks to hold off. But someone told me the other day that when the bank sent them a letter to put a stall on their mortgage, the bank charged them to put a stall on the mortgage. So better they just pay the mortgage and done. And it's just confusing. No one is doing anything for the benevolence and the sustainability of the economy. Everyone is still acting for profit. So
I would like you with travel restrictions in place, tourism sector is virtually shut down, right? What could this mean in short-term rental prices for Airbnb and travel?
all right. You see, Jamaica is a country like this. You would want the market to function based on principles, demand and supply. Yesterday, I looked at Airbnb, and there were 2 one-bedroom apartments, and the person said normally they would rent it out for $30 a night, or not 30 or 50, yeah, 50 a night. I think they said it was 50 a night. But if they're supposed to rent it for a month, they want 550. So it's basically a $50 savings. So the point I'm trying to make is a lot of these Jamaican business people are very stubborn. So they would prefer to lose than to function with the market. You understand what I'm saying? So one would prefer to not earn $600 and they would prefer to not learn than to earn 300. You understand? So they are not pulling their prices down as you would want them to go, because everyone is now saying, oh, you ever pass a car lot yet and you see a car on the lot and you see it on the lot 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, and the lot owner can't sell it. And him say, oh, you know, we can't sell it for less than this, you know, because when me buy it, I bought it for this. But it depends on the lot so long, it depreciates in a value, so them end up lose. But if they had sold it 2 years ago for a price that is less than the price that they are holding out for, you understand what I'm saying? So it's like we don't understand the market mechanism properly.
True, that's true. How do you foresee the crisis impacting domestic rents? So, housing prices, rents, how you see it impacting?
That's what I'm explaining to you. The rent and the domestic is very similar to what it was before the crisis. No one is really reducing their rent to accommodate anyone. Someone, you rent a shop, the landlord still want their rent. No care what do they want their rent. We would have hoped that the Jamaican economy functions based on the supply and demand so that rent prices would fall. But many of these people who rent their places, especially because they're still thinking about long-term contracts, don't want to rent their place for less than what they think it is worth, because one, they don't want nobody mash up them place. Two, they don't want after the crisis they can't retrieve. So I don't see, because I have been testing the market, both commercial and residential rental prices, and they are very similar to what they were before the crisis.
In terms of government taxation, we have seen where the government applied to the IMF, right, to participate in the rapid finance facility. But the question to you now is, in your opinion, do you think this amount is enough or to sufficiently cushion the financial impact felt locally?
I mean, nothing is ever going to be enough, and there's never anyone who is going to have enough resources. The idea here is that it is how you approach policy that is the important thing. And in a demand side, in a demand side crisis, you can approach policy from a demand side. But in a supply side crisis, you have to approach policy from a supply side. And what does that mean? Fiscal policy is always going to be injecting new capital into the economy, because that is its purpose, especially from an expansionary point of view. But fiscal policy can be used to support consumer demand, or it can be used to enhance productivity supply. And the idea here now is that because there's a fall in income, many countries are substituting person's income with benevolence and pumping it into the hands of consumers. But that must also be accommodated by or accompanied by as trust to putting down production costs. So the idea here is that when the government use X amount for benevolence, then there must be a push to make the extra dollar that you receive be in a position to purchase more goods. Because if you push more dollars into the economy without more goods, then it has inflationary effects anyway. And you see evidence of price gouging already. So without production, so you see where a lot of people have been making masks, and masks now is the new production. Now masks use a machine and use current, use electricity. So if they were able to push down the price of electricity to these manufacturers, we could even be selling masks to the United States. So we have tremendous potential, but we have not been exploring it from a balance point of view. It's basically either left side, right side, or up or down. It can never be, we find a lukewarm scenario where everyone can survive.
Mm-hmm. So, given the layoff or job losses in some instances of workers and the government's recent lowering of GCT, right? Against this backdrop, how do you think this will impact the GOJ's revenue target?
I mean, they already planned for that, but the government had already had 30 billion in surplus from a basic budget. So the idea here is that, I mean, they will get back some amount of that GCT through the money multiplier and additional spending, taxes, as we may see. And in this case, it will not have such a negative impact. I mean, it was already planned for, so it can be accommodated.
Makes sense. We have we'll be going into our question and answer section shortly. So joining in shortly will be Sharon Brown, a concerned business owner. So we want to go live with Sharon. Sharon, can you hear?
Yes.
Good night, how are you doing? Good night, how are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you.
So as a business owner now, specifically with regards to club ownership, right, entertainment, just give us your view in terms of how have you been impacted by COVID-19, the lockdown in St. Catherine, particularly, and
Yes.
if you have any questions for Andre.
Well, before I ask the question, yes, I have been impacted a lot. Before even COVID-19, the business that I operate, which is a bar / club, from the SOE had started, it had a great impact on our business because our closing time had changed and we are really operating at this point at a loss. So since the COVID now, things just got worse because we had us to close down everything. In regards to the business, I would like to find out if there is any plan for club owners, bars, separate from the 40,000 that the finance minister is saying that will be allocated to like bars / club, which is a one payment.
1 month's rent, basically.
It is not even for the 1 month rent because my rent is more than that. And you still have to be paying like water, lights, rent, etc. And if you have an internet there where you use your cameras, etc., you have to be paying the internet bill. But my problem is where my goods is concerned. I realize that there are a lot of expiry dates that's coming up for the drinks, etc., where we see calls, red stripe, and knowing that we are a bar, we won't be able to get those drinks.
Okay.
Like to return to us.
Yeah, man.
So I would like to just put a question to Mr. Haughton to find out if there is another forum or any other programs that will be, measures that will be put in place to assist time or after the COVID that we will be able to restock, because this is a starting over for us.
Okay.
So most of our programs or our products will be expired. So we won't be able to sell those.
All right. So question to you, Mr. Haughton, is what does the government have in place of bar owners and similar businesses?
Well, we understand your plight, Auntie, and we're very sorry for what is happening now. We understand that many bar owners and shopkeepers now are at distress because of this COVID-19 and what it has done. But now the government have to think about how do they allow you to sell your goods while at the same time keep you away from the possibility of being contaminated. And I think that is the real solution. I saw a video where a young man was very innovative and designed a pulley that he used to lower goods and receive money from consumers, a pulley system.
Yeah.
And I think that these are innovative processes that the country can implement, and it will even help to push the labor income. And now what this crisis has done is that it has shown us that we need to move away from unnecessary labor and we need necessary labor. So even people to design these pulleys in the supermarket now or in the bar would be an additional or income to these people, and it will allow business activity to take place. We have to be smart in our approach to business. We have to be smart in our approach. I think the government, we are spending too much money on trying to fill a consumption gap and not enough money on expanding the ability to exist in and after this crisis. And I don't think that this crisis is going to be over anytime soon. I think that if a company does not use this time to figure out how to survive online or innovatively in isolation, I think that many companies are going to be in problems. So we have to be serious. We have to understand that now we have to figure out where we are, and this is where money should be spent. So I think that even if the government come next month and says we're going to give you 40 more thousand for our next, and they come the next month, then what will happen to our budget 3-4 months down the line? We are going to be in the position that we were of 100% of GDP debt. So we have to be thinking clever, and now we have to be thinking about how do we use these to make ourselves the type of person that we want and achieve the business that we want through innovation. And businesses must be allowed to remain open for something or another, because people need consumption items. But it's how and the ability to remain open that is important.
Makes sense. So, Senator, recently I heard a discussion with MP saying bar owners should actually prepare themselves to reopen, and also when or if they are reopened, to ensure that social distancing is being practiced and that they're not in breach.
Okay, excellent.
Right. So, Senator, thank you for a very informative discussion.
Yes. It was good being here as well. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Blessings.
Let me just check the chat if there are any questions for Senator Dr.Andre Haughton before he goes. He'll still be here, but just not on the panel right now taking questions. So, any questions for Mr. Haughton, you can post them in the chat. So we see DCAM saying they should send monies in key places and learn to adapt.
That's the only way.
Mm-hmm. Let me see what else is there. I see where someone asked a question, or they actually had a statement to say that how will they be able to save when they have been laid off in terms of getting that deposit ready if something should come up. where you can buy a property.
What are they saying?
I was saying, someone said, how could they save if they have been laid off? How could they save for the deposit if they have been laid off?
Oh no, the idea is how you save if you lay off. That not sense. The idea here is that we if you still have a job, but if you're laid off, just go and tuck in, man. Redemption coming soon.
Mm-hmm. So in their instance, they should probably find other measures or other means to work on.
Yeah, you have to adapt. You have to adapt. Mm-hmm. We have to adapt, and that is the key here. We have to adapt.
Mm-hmm. Okay. The Stan's boss saying, yes, you should, you said government can absorb the shock, but how and how long? Senator?
Yeah?
The Stan's boss saying, you said the government can absorb the shock, but for how long?
Not for very long. We're not as robust. No economy can absorb the shock for very long. So we have to adapt, adjust, and move on.
Mm-hmm. I was seeing Shane saying, what are the measures being implemented to feed the homeless right now? Because
yeah, man, I see them opening up homeless shelters and so on. Even though last night I was driving and see a homeless man on the street, same way sleeping. But I guess, remember, you know, time will make everything happen. Remember, I'm not the government.
Kids was saying, tell us about new industries that can come from this. Like what you have in mind in terms of how we could innovate.
Whatever industry in logistics that is solving a problem, healthcare industries are also going to be critical. Any company that allows you to perform isolated from the particular space is going to be important. So you just have to be clever and innovate. And people who find services within this have to be. But if they want a consultation, then they can contact me, and then we can discuss a consultation as to where that is concerned.
Mm-hmm. So thank you, Senator, for joining us.
Thank you.
Stick around in case there are other questions for you. So we'll be joining Mr. Jordane Richardson.
Bless him.
Mr. Richardson. Mr. Richardson, here. Richardson, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing.
There you are. Welcome. Good night, sir.
Good night, Mr. Hutchinson.
COVID. How have you been?
Let me get this thing ready. All right, so thanks for having me tonight, Mr. Hutchinson.
So, Mr. Richardson, for persons who are not familiar with you, can you just introduce yourself to us and tell us how have you been? Have you been working from home? Are you staying safe?
Yes. I guess that's a new thing now, working from home. Yes, and I think I'm COVID free.
That's good to know. So, Mr. Richardson, just for our viewers' sake, can you just introduce yourself? You might not need to go so much into detail in terms of where you work, but just give us a backdrop.
All right. So, well, as you know, as you mentioned before, I'm Jordane Richardson. I'm a treasury management specialist, and I am mostly in the foreign exchange market and a little money market transactions.
Mm-hmm. So, we have seen where the US government would have implemented several interventions in response to the global pandemic, COVID-19, right? So,
Yes.
what do you know, our viewers just want to know, is there is there is a view that the central bank's power are what some would call limited, right? So because they can only increase or decrease interest rates, what are your thoughts on this statement?
Well, certainly that is not the case of the central bank. It's not just to reduce and increase rates. Actually, there are a number of other tools that they have. So in effecting stability. So they can either transact or get into transaction in the fixed income market via issuing instruments, either to take liquidity or early redeem instruments, which we've seen them do. They did that last year, September, in order to inject liquidity into the market. And in addition to that, they can go about this via the foreign exchange market by buying and selling US currency, which they have done in recent times.
Okay, excellent. So from your perspective, how has the market responded to the various interventions?
Now, in all honesty, the central bank hasn't been in the market, been very active in the market on the US dollar side. So not much intervention has taken place. I think year to date, they have intervened with 40 million US dollars. And I think this is because of the view that they aren't at this time perturbed or worried about what may happen. So I think they're watching, they're looking at it, and they're analyzing, and they're taking the time before they actually, you actually see their footprint in the market. But as it is, they have only come in with 40 million US dollars as at year to date, that is.
In terms of foreign exchange now, we have started to see an increase in the rate of depreciation of the JMD against the US, right? So relative to last year. So obviously this is as a result of the pandemic, right? So we just want to know from your perspective now, in the simplest terms possible, can you tell our viewers right now what can they expect in terms of the Forex market?
Well, to be frank, we can expect lower liquidity levels. When we had our first case in March, there was a travel restriction placed, which would have meant that tourists wouldn't have been able to come to Jamaica. And tourism is one of our main foreign exchange earners. So I think on average per month, authorized dealers and cambios purchase over 600 million in US dollars from the hoteliers and tourism sector. And we can expect that to fall in excess of 50% if this continues. So we're looking at the levels going as low as 200 million US dollars per month. These liquidity levels will certainly result in depreciation, and we're seeing depreciation. I think month to date, we are at $7.84 in depreciation. I think today it closed at an all-time high at $1.43.23. So I think we can expect further depreciation as the supply has closed. And nonetheless, I think the BOJ is still wary of what may happen, and they are much in control and watching the dynamics. And I think at 143, they aren't perturbed given the conditions that we are in. So let's see when they'll intervene, when we'll see the footprint of the BOJ in the market.
Outside of tourism, remittances and mining, do you see another sector that might step in to supply the market with some amount of FX to mitigate impact from the fallout?
Well, interestingly enough, the business processing outsourcing sector was an increase in supply of foreign exchange that we saw. And the irony is, given the closure of these BPO type companies since mid-April, I think what has happened is that is one of the sources that has been cut off from us, which indicates how the levels of liquidity will be low in the coming months. So, and typically how these BPO works is they receive funding for expenditure in Jamaica from their parent companies in US dollars. So generally these flows, we have consistent flows. We have seen consistent flows. So given that what has happened and the risk of the operation of these BPOs, given how the structure is and the close location of the employees within the businesses, certainly that is one of the gap fillers that are now on the decline. So outside of the BPO, we await the central bank to show its face and to be more aggressive in the market in putting inflows to the market.
So the BOJ would have announced the FX swap arrangement, right? This along with existing measures, right? How do you see these tools impacting the market in a positive way?
No. Firstly, so for the viewers who may not understand what is a foreign exchange swap. Now, this is a foreign exchange instrument. FX swap is a foreign exchange instrument, whereas two counterparties agree on a buy and a sell rate of currency at a current price and a time in the future. So an example would be me deciding to buy some currency from another counterparty at maybe, typically we buy it, say now we buy it at 140, and I'll agree to sell it at a lower rate sometime in the future, maybe at 139.95, which is a 5 cent spread, and the price that I pay. But I think how the central bank envisioned the product was to provide liquidity and to smooth out the supply, because typically we have seasonal supply when it comes down to foreign exchange. So in the event where the supply is low, I could take on a swap, purchase a swap, given that I'm expecting the inflows to increase further down the month. So when that inflow is increased, then we'll redeem the swap. So I think it started to work when it came about in late January, February, but then the pandemic, the virus hit us, and I think it threw off a lot of the effect that it was expected to have. So as it is now, it's very difficult to assess the performance of the swap instrument given this pandemic. And I mean, overall, it has been very difficult to assess the economy and to just make normal analytics and based on the virus and what it has done.
So, persons in the chat, we see where a few questions have been posted for both Mr. Richardson and Dr. Andre Haughton. We'll have them come on closer towards the end to take questions. Until then, we'll be joining our next panelist, Mistress Michelle Sinclair-Doyley. Mistress Sinclair-Doyley. Oh, good night, Mr. Sinclair. How are you doing?
Oh, Doyley, Mrs. Doyley, just to make sure that my husband is happy. But you can also just call me Michelle. I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine myself.
Wonderful.
Wonderful. So, Mrs. Doyley, could you just introduce yourself for our viewers?
All right. So, first of all, thank you so much for having me on. And my name is Michelle Sinclair-Doyley, and I'm the Manager Group Financial Education at JMB. And so what I do is I teach people about money. So for the persons who are watching right now, go ask a friend to come join you right now on this chat so that we can all benefit, right? So that information that you have, you can now start to share with your friends and we start learning together. And thank you so much for the opportunity, Omaro.
So, Mr. Sinclair, we have a few questions, burning issues that I'm certain our viewers would want to get a better understanding of what's happening and what it means for them in terms of COVID-19, right? So, just the other day on the news, I saw where a man was sharing a very sentimental story in terms of losing his job and finding it difficult to purchase basic items like bread and bulla and them stuff, right? Right. So some persons would say, how much should he have saved for this rainy day that we are pretty much having right now? How much should the average Jamaican have in store?
That's a really, really good question. And I did actually see that clip, and my heart was really moved when I saw the gentleman, because so many people are in that situation right now, or they are at.
Mrs. Doyley? So, folks, if you have questions concerned in terms of what's happening and how it impacts your ability to pay your car loan, your mortgage, in terms of financial education.
Hi, I'm back. I'm not sure what happened. I apologize.
I too am so sorry, but this is just the nature of Instagram after an hour. I'm getting to find out. So just posting back the question to you, how much is enough to be saved right now?
All right, so since your segment is entitled Navigating the Financial Storm, when looking at how much money we ought to have, if we're talking about regular breeze blow, right, then we're looking at normally having 3 to 6 months of our expenses. And we typically only know how much that is if we would have done our budgets. However, when you have this kind of storm that we're now in with COVID, it means that we have to do so much more, because there is a possibility of not having a source of employment and not having one for quite a long time, a protracted period of time. So the ideal would be to have 9 months to a year. And I know that some persons are saying, what? 9 months to a year, how would I ever get there? And if you're thinking that I was once in your position, I remember I had to save from 1 day's emergency fund to eventually having 2 days emergency fund. And when I reached a week's emergency fund, I celebrated, right? However, it just means that you just need to accept where you are and start immediately. And you know, every mickle make a muckle. That's what we keep on saying in Jamaica. So we want to ensure that we utilize our mickles well, so that we can have a lot when it comes on to our muckle. So for persons who are currently employed, the truth is that we don't know what will happen in the future. So try right now to save aggressively. Notice I didn't say invest aggressively, you know. I said save aggressively. And saving aggressively means looking at your budget and determining how much you can pull out of that budget and put towards your savings. And as a matter of fact, you know, it's a good idea to put that amount away and decide on that amount and then put it away, rather, before you even start looking at your expenses. And I know that some people are saying that, Michelle, that is very, very hard to do. Do you know what my expenses are? Been there, so I understand, but you have to make up your mind as to how much you want to save, and then now you start looking at how much can I reduce the light bill by, how much can I reduce the water bill by, etc., in order that I will have sufficient for this savings, because it's so crucial at this time.
Excellent. So some persons are now out of a job, right? Laid off in some cases. From your perspective, from your experience, then, what advice would you give to those persons in terms of they know that they're out of a job? What?
Well, first of all, I empathize with you. It must be so hard at this time, and many persons are very nervous. What I would say is, if you are out of a job at this time, Now is a time when you have to be creative. We know that we Jamaicans can turn we hand and make fashion, and that's what you have to do. So, going back to the whole matter of doing the budget, you have to know exactly how much money you're going to need on a monthly basis. And then you're going to start setting some targets. And you want to look at what immediate income can you generate. So immediate income can be, for example, you may have a 2-car home and you can sell 1 car. Maybe there's a crib that you've had for quite some time. You have no desire to have another child. You can sell the crib at this time. Maybe it would be electronics. Some persons have an expensive phone and it may be good to know trading that phone to get something cheaper. So you sell your more expensive phone to get something else for a while. It doesn't mean that you won't acquire these things again. It just means that just for right now, because the priority is to get some money into the household, there are some sacrifices that we will have to make, right? Or would be advisable to make. Not easy choices, but we know that when we are in a situation, we have to ban the belly, right? And then we also want to look at interim income. So you want to look at what is it that you can supply to the market. A friend of mine said the other day that money has not left the market, you know. It has only changed hands. And so what we want to do is to ensure that the money comes in our hands. And it would be based on looking at what is it that people need in this environment. So all of a sudden, I see all kinds of supermarkets that are now delivering goods. Maybe you could be one of the persons that could utilize your car in order to do some deliveries. And then people don't just need regular cleaning services anymore. No, they want professional cleaning services. Particularly restaurants that are still open, they want to make sure that persons know that when they come to their establishment, they will not be at significant risk, right? I have to say, for getting corona. And so professional cleaning services can take off in this time. Nutritious meal preparation and delivery. That's another big one because many women are working from home, the kids are there, and they're recognizing it is so hard to be every day cooking a meal. And so to have meals coming into the home, it would be helpful to them. But then the operative word is nutritious because so many people now are looking at what is healthy in order to build up their immune systems against COVID. If you are somebody who is into IT, there are many organizations right now that need to know have online sales, and they need somebody who is versed at putting them onto the online channels. And so therefore, go ahead and do that. The other day, somebody told me about just how packed it was at the tax office. And the person said, man, I wish somebody would have just gone down there for me. I could just give them my stuff and the person would go down there. And yes, there are long lines at a lot of places. So these are things that you can do. How about saying, okay, in this office, I'll come and I'll pick up things for everybody that wants things to go to the tax office, and I will do that kind of thing. So if we are looking for the opportunities, we will find the opportunities in this environment. So if you're not in a job right now, just put your thinking caps on. And then, of course, you want to start looking for a steady form of income, whether it is a new job or whether it is that you're going to formalize that COVID hustle and make it your real deal. And then, you know what? For some persons, you would eventually get a new job later on. Plus, you would have had whatever your COVID hustle was, and now you could start having increased income later on. So it may look bleak right now. However, there is a lot of good that will come out of COVID, and you just have to be prepared to be one of them that capitalizes on it.
So this is a two-part question for you. With income uncertainty due to job loss, right? Or reduced hours, what should be our priority now in terms of debt, and also in terms of just making payment to loans? Where do we stand now? Should we send in a letter to the bank? What should be our way forward?
That's a good idea. The truth is that cash is king right now. And so, whatever cash you have, particularly if you have reduced income or you have no income, you want to make that money stretch for as long as it possibly can. Therefore, yes, you do want to have a conversation with your bank, but here's what happens with some persons. You may have a lump sum in the financial institution and you say, boy, I'm going to be out of a job. I don't want to have a loan on my head. And so let me just pay this off. I'm going to encourage you not to do that. Let me give you an example. Suppose you have a loan for $500,000 and your repayment, including interest, is $15,000 a month. Then even if you're unemployed for 2 years, you would have paid roughly $300 and about $60,000, right? So that's 15,000 times 24 months, and you would have $140,000 left back in the financial institution. However, if you paid off the loan immediately, then immediately your bank account would be down by $500,000, and it would be a lot more difficult for you to meet your monthly obligations, especially on a reduced income or with no income at all. So therefore, you want to make sure that you make the money stretch by just maintaining the debt payments if you can, right? If you recognize that you're going to run into problems, however, the first thing you want to do is to speak with your financial institution before you actually run into problems. So don't wait until, well, you can't make the payment this month or you can't make the payment next month. Immediately go in and state your case. But let me just speak a little bit, Omaro, on the high interest rate loans. Because some persons may have those high interest rate loans from the same day loan facilities or credit cards. And with those ones, you want to see whether you can, in some instances, you maintain it. Now, in regular circumstances, you would say to persons, pay off everything. But remember, on reduced income or on less or no income at all, what you want to do is to make the money last. So in those cases, what you may want to do is pay the minimum balance at the very least. At the very least. But what would be even more advisable, and this is available to persons who have reduced income, is to consolidate the debt. And consolidation is where, let us say you have 5 loans of 100,000 each, and you have it at institution A, B, C, D, E, etc. What you would do is take one large loan of $500,000 and pay out those loans. However, it's important that the new interest rate be lower than the weighted average interest rate of the other loans that you would have paid out, so that what you now benefit from is a reduction in your loan payment per month, which is what will help the money to last longer.
Last question before we go. Just for viewers who are probably there now wondering, they would want to take advantage of the stock market right now, just based on where prices are. Is this a good time right now to jump in the stock market?
And it all depends. It depends on your financial status. At this time, it is important to remember that financial professionals are not magicians, and also they cannot see into the future with 100% certainty. And so there is a lot of volatility that will happen in the market. In other words, the prices will go up and down, and sometimes pretty rapidly. So it is important that you look at certain things. So one, you don't want to invest in the stock market right now unless you have sufficient emergency funds. And remember, we're talking about, at this time, roughly 9 months to a year's worth of emergency funds. Then, just to go into the reasoning behind that, okay? If you have put all your money in the stock market and something happens, your child gets sick or some other expense comes up, then what will happen is that more than likely you will have to pull money from the stocks or from whatever other kinds of investments if it is that you did not have emergency funds. And there is a chance that the value of the stocks, or the price of the stocks rather, would have gone down. So you can now suffer a loss. You don't want that to happen to you. When you have emergency funds, it becomes your cushion. So there is less likelihood of you having to now take a loss on your stocks. So therefore, that is the importance of having the robust emergency fund first. The second thing you want to do is looking at your individual circumstance. Speak to a licensed financial advisor to help to determine what your risk tolerance is. In other words, how much up and down in the value of your money you can manage without feeling as though you're going to go crazy or you have a heart attack or something like that. And the risk tolerance is made up of two things. It is made up of our willingness and our ability. And many people are willing to run into the stock market at this time because they foresee that there will be great opportunities for stock prices to increase and they'll make a lot of money. However, it's not just about your willingness. It is also whether you're able to afford it. So it's willingness and ability. So speak to a licensed financial advisor so that they can advise you properly as to what that is. The other thing before going into the stock market is you want to know how far away you are from your financial goal. So a goal that is 5 years away is a great goal for the stock market. However, if you have a goal of getting a house, for example, by next year, you say, boy, the stock market is going to go up, so I'm going to just put everything in there. And then it is supposed to work wonders for me by next year. That may not happen. So therefore, once a goal is pretty near, you don't want to risk it by putting it in the stock market. And if it is, though, that you've spoken to your financial advisor and they have said, listen, you would be an excellent candidate for the stock market at this time, then you want to look at companies that are undervalued at this time and companies that would have weathered storms before. We would have had a financial storm in 2008, and look at the companies that weathered that well. And those would be good companies for you to now look at. And also companies that are well diversified. So they don't have all their eggs in one basket. And companies that have demand for their goods even in times of crisis. So those are the ones that you'd look for. So the answer therefore, Omaro, is that is it a good time to jump into the stock market? It may well be, right? The stock market prices are lower than they have been in many, many years, right? And it presents an opportunity. But an opportunity for one person is not an opportunity for everybody just yet. We just need to make sure that we are poised financially so that we can properly take advantage. We want to look at proper financial management, get your debt in order, get your finances in order in terms of your emergency funds, and then you can look at wonderful things like investing.
Awesome, awesome. So, Ms. Sinclair, it's been a pleasure. We'll just take a few questions, one or two from the group. If our viewers have any question for either Mistress Doyley or Mr. Haughton or Mr. Richardson, can you just please post them to the group so we can take a few questions before we go? I'm not seeing them. I'm trying to check the chat questions. So well said, Sharon Brown. Seems we don't have any questions at this time for our panelists. So, question, as earlier you said to look for companies that are undervalued. For our viewers who probably not aren't as savvy, could you just maybe just briefly touch on undervalued different from prices? Does a low price mean that it's undervalued?
A low price does not mean that something is undervalued. So let us think about when we go to a regular market. And we know that, for example, the value of tomatoes would normally be $100 per pound. I'm just picking a figure out of a hat. And right now you have tomatoes that are going for $50 a pound. But when you look at the tomatoes really not good enough. Look as though somebody has felt them up and they look soft and soggy. So although the price of the tomatoes would have been lower than what the prices of the tomatoes would normally have been, it does not necessarily mean that the tomatoes are good. What you need to do is to be looking at the fundamentals of the company. So fundamentals starts with F and financials start with F. And so when we talk about fundamentals, we're looking at the financials of the company. Now, the truth is that the average investor really doesn't have either the time or the knowledge base to be able to know properly look at the financials of the company to make a good decision. And that is where your financial advisor will come into play. And also, many organizations have unit trusts now, so that even if you don't know how to trade in the stock market and you don't know anything at all about stocks, once you buy into their unit trust that is made up of stocks, they will now do the trading and you can now reap the benefits. So if somebody really is not familiar with the stock market, I would say speak to a licensed financial professional and see whether the unit trust option would be an excellent option for you. However, there are wonderful institutions like yourself, right? Like Biinstitute, that will teach you so much about the valuation of a stock, etc., so that you can now come out of this financial crisis far more financially aware and far more financially educated.
Excellent. Well said, Mr. Doyley. We have drawn to the end of our program. We'd like to thank our panelists. We'd like to thank our sponsors, Black Knight Entertainment, A&N Loans, Island Beverages, and Cave Studios. It has been a pleasure joining you here today to provide a simplified discussion of all the economic and financial happenings as a result of COVID-19. We'll be having another segment next week, same time, so tune in. We'll be discussing business continuity amidst COVID-19. We'll be speaking with various entrepreneurs and we'll be exploring a few innovative ideas that they have implemented or at least have in their pipeline for implementation. Right? So another fruitful discussion, simplified, grassroots, joining, ask questions, participate. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
I am Omar Hutchinson, your financial version.